Welcome to the Cannabis Detox Programming Podcast with your host, the one, the only, Cannabis Detox. Okay, so I want to talk about game engines today. I'm just gonna ramble on about game engines. So, what is a game engine? Well, a game engine is basically somebody else's code that is going to help you make a game. It's going to make it easier for you to make a game. And I say somebody else's code, because I wanted you to think of it like that, like it's this other piece of code. But really, it could be your code. You know, it's just some sort of library, some sort of code that is self-contained that exists solely to make making games easier. So, what does that really look like? Okay, so I know in a general way it makes making games easier. Sure, Cannabis Detox, but how does it actually make making games easier? Well, it'll do things like it'll make it easier to do 2D animation, right? Maybe it'll take a sprite sheet and do at least some of the processing for you. You know, maybe it'll easier to maybe you can just drag and drop sprite sheets. Maybe maybe the engine allows you to just select a folder and then it'll automatically go through the folder and all its subfolders and organize all your sprite sheets for you, and give you and allow you to play all the animations easily right there and test them out. And that's the sort of thing a game engine can do for you. Another thing it'll do is all game engines really they all look basically the same. They have a main loop that gets called, and the main loop gets called every animation frame. And if you don't know what an animation frame is, just go look it up. It'd take too long to explain. But for those who just need a refresher, basically in any sort of animation, whether it's 2D or 3D, whether it's a movie that you filmed in a camera and then played back on the screen, like any sort of animation, whether it's been drawings or actual video footage, is just a series of images played back rapidly, right? So 24 frames per second just means 24 images per second in animation. So basically every time that the computer goes to draw a new image, a new frame of animation, this main loop will be called. And that's pretty universal for pretty much all video games. It's not necessarily a smart thing to do to tie your logic in with your drawing. Really, your logic should just be totally separate from your drawing. But whatever. What do I know? This is just how things are done. But okay. So I'll get back to that. I'll get back to this main loop thing because it's an important concept, especially if you want to make your own game engine. And even if you're going to use somebody else's game engine, you're going to be using their main loop. But let me talk about some of the other features that a lot of game engines have. A lot of game engines will also make it easier to use sound. A lot of times 3D animation can be a pain in the ass. They'll allow you to, they'll do a lot of the math for you, so to speak, a lot of the bullshit for you, as far as like sending numbers to the graphics card. That way you can just deal with models and animations and stuff and not worry about all the details, all the nuts and bolts of actually getting the computer to draw those models. It can also offer you physics, right? So if you want things to like bounce around, like Super Smash Brothers, right? If you want that sort of feel where how hard you hit them, or how weak they are when you hit them, it impacts how far they fly and their rebound and all that. Like that's that you'd want physics in your game. And a game engine can instead of having to look up how to do everything, a game engine can make it a lot easier. Can at least get can meet you halfway. You still have to learn how to use the physics engine, but at least you wouldn't have to learn how to implement all the functions for there, or at least have to Google how to implement all the functions yourself. So it's helpful in that regard. Also, if you want to do like some sort of puzzle game, or like maybe like a brick game where you have the stupid ball that bounces around and breaks bricks. You can use physics for stuff like that. And then you also get collision detection usually, but I mean, not that that's hard to implement. But you can get it'll say like, oh, did this image overlap over this image? Did this model overlap over this model? You can set hitboxes. Again, it's just the point of a game engine is just to do basically a lot of the grunt work on your behalf, so you don't have to do it. It doesn't actually like make the game for you. It just basically creates the tools that you would have to create yourself if you didn't use the engine. Also, just one last thing about the graphics. I mentioned like sending numbers to the graphics cards, so like things like OpenGL and WebGL and shit like that, where you have this where like you're literally sending numbers for triangles to the graphics card. Like, I don't know. I don't really want to do that. That sounds fucking horrible. So yeah, a lot of times, I would always reach for a graphics library in that case, or somebody else's engine. I don't want to do that shit. Okay, so let's say you wanted to make your own game engine. Now, JavaScript actually makes 2D game development really easy if you want to do everything yourself. You don't actually have to use anybody's libraries to do 2D game development in JavaScript unless there might be some sort of feature that an engine has that might be hard to do on your own. I don't know. In that case, go for it. I'm not saying don't use libraries. I'm just saying if you're interested in learning how to implement or figuring out how to implement a game engine on your own and writing your game completely from scratch in JavaScript, it makes it real easy. The reason I say it makes it so easy is because like the 2D animation is really easy to do in JavaScript with the canvas. You would obviously make the whole entire game on the canvas, but it has functions built in that make dealing with sprite sheets really easy. Like when you draw an image in JavaScript with the canvas, it has you like it asks which section of the image you actually want to draw, and that's perfect for what a sprite sheet is, because a sprite sheet is sections of images, right? It's a bunch of images in different sections. So if you can draw different sections of an image, then you're in the game. So anyway, so what would that even look like? Well, what does a game engine actually look like in the nuts and bolts? Well, all it really is, like I said, is that main function that gets called every frame, and inside that main function, two things are going to happen. Okay, you're going to update all your logic, which means you're basically going to you're going to look at the state of the game, where is my player, where are my enemies, where are the bullets, where are the explosions, where are the traps go off, did somebody die, what's everybody's health at, that you're going to look at all that stuff, all of the different details, all the information of your game, and then you're going to change the game state, right? So like if a bomb goes off next to a bunch of enemies, you're going to deal that damage to those enemies. If that damage is enough to kill them, those enemies are then going to die. Like this is the time that you're going to take care of all that stuff. And this is all just the logic. So this is all just like changing the values of variables and removing things from arrays and change. Yeah, you're just changing the fucking state basically of your game. And then the second thing you're going to do is then you're going to draw everything. So you notice like when we're updating anything, we're not drawing everything as we're updating everything. Like we're just in this frame, we're updating everything that's happened thus far. And then we're going to draw everything. Okay? And that's important because you could if you're trying to draw stuff as you're updating, you could run into problems. You could run into players seeing things that you didn't mean for them to see, like possibly like things being alive that shouldn't have been alive, or dying and then coming back to life. Stupid stuff like that that you don't want. Like you update everything and then you draw everything. It's a separation of concerns. So that's all it's all really a game engine is. It's not hard to write. And JavaScript, the canvas makes it really easy. Because all you really have to do is use this thing called request animation frame. And what request animation frame does is it's just a callback. It's just a simple, it takes you give it a function, and it'll call that function, when the next animation frame comes about, which will be like a fraction of a second. So you just write a recursive function basically. So you have this main function, and in that main function you'll call request animation frame with the name of the main function, which is usually just literally just main. I usually call my main loop, but I'm an idiot. I like to just do things differently and make my life harder for no reason. So, but really everybody just calls it main. So you'd be like, you just say main equals function, and then in the body you would say request animation frame main. It's really that simple. It's not anything complicated, and that's your main loop. And then in that main loop you would put a function literally called update logic, update all logic, and another function called draw everything to the screen. You could give them fancy, weird names, and then have a comment that says, "Update all logic, draw everything to the screen," or you just call the functions that. And then you're not reading things twice and trying to decipher things. And in that update function, you in the update all logic function, what you can basically do there. Well, I'll get back to what you can do there, but it'll be generic. You're not really going to write all the logic for your game in the update all logic function. What you're going to do is you're going to write the logic for the different pieces, and then that logic can just plug in to your game engine. And I'll explain what I'm talking about in a second. So you have this simple function, right? You have this main function. It updates the logic, it draws everything on the screen, and then it calls itself recursively, right? That's basically what any sort of main loop is going to look like. Well, then what if I want to pause my game? Well, pausing the game is as simple as just a Boolean value, right? You have some sort of variable. In JavaScript, you could even attach it to the main loop. You could have the variable be a property of your main loop. You could have a global variable. Usually, you would tuck that global variable into some sort of object, right? So it wouldn't just be pause. It would probably be like game.pause. Kind of namespace out the global variable that way. But yeah, and then in the game you just check: is the game paused? If it is, okay, I'm not going to do anything, and then I'm just going to request the next animation frame. And then otherwise you just carry on with what you're going to do. Okay, and then the next thing, the only thing left you need to do is time. Everything is so simple so far. You have this loop. Okay, it gets called at every animation frame. You update all your logic. You draw everything, and then you add this thing, this just if statement, just to see if things are paused. And if it's paused, then you reloop. Right? Things are simple. And the last thing you add is time. And the way time works is again simple, not nothing complex. We're not getting into any sort of astrophysics here. All you do is you have a variable called the time of the last animation frame, and whatever language you're using, in this case JavaScript, will have some sort of built-in function for getting the current time, and so you'll set it to the current time, and then in the main loop, what you'll do is you'll get the difference between the time right now, which will set to a variable or something like that, and the time since the last animation frame, right? And then and then you pass that difference, that time passed, that will go to your update all logic function. And the update all logic function will use the amount of time passed between frames to determine things like, oh, how far should I move an object? You know, because if an object is moving at a certain speed, right, then it'll go the distance that it's going to be moved is going to be determined by the time that's passed, right? It's not. I'm not speaking. Again, this is not genius stuff here. This is dumb shit. This is easy shit. Okay. So you take the time passed and you pass the update all logic function, and the logic will use it later to move things the proper distance and stuff like that, and make sure, you know, if there's somebody's health is increasing over time, it'll increase the proper rate. And then after you do that, then you then set the time of the last animation frame to the time of this current frame to set it up for the next interval, for the next loop. Right, so it's not complicated. Okay? You just take a variable and you just keep track of the time that passes between each call to the main loop, and that time that's passed between each call to the main loop represents the time that's passing between each frame, right? Because the main loop gets called each frame, right? Nothing complicated. And that's it. That's basically like a game. That's basically your game engine. You know, how does the now how in detail do you now? So obviously, like you understand how the pause works, so that's simple, and you understand how the time difference works. That's simple. But in detail, how in JavaScript would I go about updating all my logic and drawing all my shit to the screen? How does that actually work? Well, updating all your logic, you know, you can do any number of ways. I'm not saying that you should do this. Okay, I'm just saying this is one way to do things. I think it's a simple way to do things, but you can do things any number of ways. You know, what I think is easy is you just keep an array, you know, which represents a set, and in that array, you will put in functions that should be called when you update all your logic. And in this way, things throughout your program can basically subscribe to the main loop simply by adding their functions to this array. So what the fuck do I mean by that? Okay. So let's say I have a player and I'm writing the code for the player. I got a file. It's one file, and it's just detailing out everything the player's about. You know, he's got a position on the screen. He's got an X, Y. I'm gonna put him in the top left corner. Say 100, 100. That's my boy's spot. He's this tall. You'll say, you know, he's 60 pixels tall. He's 10 pixels wide. This is my boy right here. He looks like he's gonna be when I draw him to the screen, he's gonna be a blue box. He's gonna be the fucking bluest box you've ever seen. I'm talking fucking 00 FFF whatever. 4F. No, it's 0000 FF. Whatever. He's gonna be blue. Okay? He's gonna be a blue square. And that's it. That's my guy. And he's gonna he's gonna move across the screen. I'm not even gonna control him. This guy's gonna be the most independent player character you've ever fucking seen. He's just gonna move to the right, and he's gonna keep moving to the right until he's off the screen, and then he'll be gone out of my life forever. Okay, just a real simple. I'm a real simple programmer. So I'm detailing out my player. I'm basically creating an object, and I'm giving it these different properties, right? Height, width, X, Y, color, which you could call style or fill style. You know, whatever you want to go for, depending on if you want to match with JavaScript's API and you want to be consistent, it's fine. And then I'm going to create a function. But more accurately, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the array of my basically, like I mentioned, there's going to be an array for the main loop for my update all logic, right? So when my update all logic gets called, it's going to go through this array, and it's going to call every function in the array, and pass it time. So what I'm going to do in my player file is I'm going to I'm going to add a function to that array. I'm going to take that array that the update all logic is going to iterate over, and I'm going to add a function and do a brand new function. And in that function, I'm going to check my player's health. And if that player's health is below 0, then my player is dead, and I'm going to kill him. Okay. Now my player's not going to take any damage, but I'm just letting you know this is how a health system will work. Now, in addition to that, like I said, he's going to move to the right. Don't worry, he's not going to die. He doesn't even have any health. His health will be undefined. It's not even going to do anything. Right, we're in this hypothetical program we're not writing. All you do to move him right is you just take the x coordinate and you add some to it, right? You just add +5 or whatever. Okay, but you have to do +5 times the amount of time that's passed, right? Because distance equals speed times time. Oh fuck. Dirt. D equals rate times time. Oh shit. The stuff they taught you in school is coming back. It's important. No, come on. This shit is easy. Okay. So it's like everything. And the thing is, if you look up tutorials, it'll tell you like time delta. Multiply it by time delta time. It's like just say like the time since the last frame. Like just say like just speak English, dude. Like you're not smart. You didn't even. It's not like you came up with delta time. Like you just fucking saw it on some other tutorial in some other book. It's just some of those fucking made up words. You can say time since last frame. It's not gonna kill you. Okay, you don't have to say fucking delta time when in a fucking tutorial where you're trying to explain shit to people. Anyway, all right. So that's all you do, right? You just if you wanted to move it to the right, you just add a certain value multiplied by the time since the last frame. And like I said, this is all one function, and the only parameter it takes is the amount of time passed. And all you're doing is you're just taking that function, adding it to this array that'll be iterated over. And I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm just saying this is a simple way to make your own game engine. It's very flexible. It's easy to make in JavaScript. It's no big deal. It's easy. Like the main file is it's going to be less than 50 lines. I don't even know how many lines it is. Probably 30. I don't know. It's because you just have this simple program where you just have a couple of arrays. So the thing is, all right, so we go to drawing, right? And drawing is basically the same way. You'll have an array which will represent, the functions that you want to be called when you want to draw stuff, right? The drawing, to draw everything to the screen, doesn't actually draw anything to the screen. It just calls some functions that hypothetically, in the future, should draw stuff to the screen. And the order in the array will represent basically the Z layer, the distance between the camera and the background. I guess the background. I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, so the layers, the layer order. So if something is closer in the if something is the beginning of the drawing array, it'll get drawn first, right? And so the stuff that comes after it will get drawn in front of it. So the farther down in the array, in terms of the index of the element, the closer to the screen it'll be. The more on top of everything it'll be drawn. Simple, nothing complicated here. And how you would do that? Well, Canvas makes it really easy. You would just say, like I said, back in the player file, you would add a function to the drawing array. So you've added a function of the update array. Now you're going to add a function of the drawing array, and then you would simply draw a blue square. It's that simple in that array. And you would make sure that the position of the square matches the position of the player. So that way, the square is actually getting drawn in a different place as the player's x coordinate changes, which is simple. It's nothing complicated. And that's it. I mean, that's how easy it is to make your own game engine in JavaScript. It's not that complicated. If you want to do something like lighting, you could even do your own lighting, because you just create gradients and transparent boxes and circles and stuff like that if you want to do your own lighting. Like I said, I think for 3D graphics in JavaScript, it's I think you probably have to go through a library. I don't know if the doing it vanilla is feasible if you'd never done it. I don't know. I've never done it before. I don't know how hard it would be, but I know for 2D games, it's really a breeze. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to use somebody else's game engine when they make a game. And I'm telling you, if you program JavaScript, you really don't have to. If you know how to if programming is not hard, if you're still learning how to program, if you're still learning how to build things, if you're not comfortable solving arbitrary problems, then maybe not. Maybe use somebody else's library and make things easy on yourself. But if you're pretty good, pretty confident, you use other languages before. I think making your own engine is no big deal. Especially, I think most of it is just knowing what it is. Like, not, it's not like I came up with this stuff on my own. This is just from looking at other people's code, looking at tutorials, looking at articles, reading books, skimming books, really. Let's be honest. Reading a whole fucking programming book, fuck that. But doing exercises, doing my own projects. But yeah, it's not. I think you just need to know what is a game engine? How with the basics of it? What in general? What does this look like? I did want to go over some other examples, just quickly, just to like give you. I talked about a player moving to the right. I also talked about its health and checking for its death. Yeah, the player might take damage over time. All you would need to do in a system like that is in literally the same file that you're writing all the other player code in. You write a little function to check for the player's health, and then if it doesn't, if it's below 0, then you can remove its update and draw functions from the array, so that way it won't be drawn to the screen anymore. I don't know, you can change, maybe you have some Boolean and some property value that it goes from alive to dead, and that changes things. I don't know, you could then, have set its animation, its death animation, different stuff like that. If you want to check if a bullet hit an enemy, that's simple too, right? Like you probably put it in the bullet file, and the bullet would just check to see if there's anything. It basically it would iterate over all the enemies and see if any of their x and y coordinates are within distance of its own x and y coordinates, right? And you would just use the distance formula from grade school for that, right? Simple stuff. And if you don't remember it, you don't have to remember it. You just Google it. And JavaScript and most programming languages have most of that math built in. Usually you don't have to do everything yourself. Usually a lot of that stuff is built in. And then so then that's easy, right? And if you wanted to have anything sort of move across the screen over time, right? If, like, let's say there's a cliff and there's a platform that moved up and down, so you had to hop on the platform to elevator yourself up the top of the cliff. That elevator would basically just be taking in the time argument from the main loop, right? The main loop is processing every frame. It's taking the time since the last frame, and then it's sending that time out to all these different functions. And this particular function would just move up and down based on the time, and when it got up to a certain past a certain y value, it would reverse, and then when it got below a certain y value, it would go back up. And this game stuff, a lot of times it seems complicated, but I hope you realize me explaining this stuff to you, like, it's not. It's I think it's a little daunting sometimes, of the amount of work that you have to do to put into a video game, especially coming up with all the stupid drawings once you got the code done. It's just a lot. So that's easy. Okay, so I kind of understand how to draw a player and enemy, right? You just kind of give it this x and y value, and then it gets drawn to the screen every frame. But what about like menus and heads-up displays, showing health bars and things like that? Well, it's more or less the same thing. You're more or less going to create some sort of object with some sort of position, and subscribe to the draw array, right? And you can always get more fancy. If you need more organization, you could have arrays within your drawing array. You could have this is my GUI drawing array, or this is my heads up display drawing array. This is my menu drawing array. This is my pop up drawing. That way you don't have you always know that everything's getting drawn in the correct order, stuff like that. And you could also reposition a bunch of elements if you group them together like that. You could also would also like drag and drop things into different positions, like grouping wise, so that you can get organized with this stuff. And it's really I just hope that I want to talk about game engines because I think it's a lot easier than you might have thought it would be. You might have thought it was some super complicated hard thing, and certainly it's if we're talking about you wanted to build something like Unity. I mean, well, first of all, I didn't even think Unity was going to be as successful as it was. Because came about, it just seemed like another game maker. But it didn't make up its own. Well, it did make up its own script, but I mean, it also supported C Sharp, and I think the support for C Sharp is why it's done so well. But anyway, no. So what I wanted to say was that obviously I think making game engine JavaScript from scratch is not hard, and I wanted you to know how easy it is. But at the same time, we're talking about making a full featured game engine, with physics and shaders and all sorts of animation support. If you had motion tweening and I think Unity will let you see state machines. It'll visualize the state. If you had a bunch of stuff like that, obviously that's going to take you an insane amount of time. That stuff is hard. It is hard to make something of that scale. But for something just something simple enough to make a simple game, and something where you can understand the whole system, so that when it comes to bugs and things not working, you can understand everything that's going on. It's really not hard, and it's not going to look any different either. Honestly, if you make a 2D animation game in Unity versus a 2D animation from scratch, it's not going to look any different. It really isn't. Unless you're using some sort of advanced. I'm not saying Unity probably does have some sort of advanced features in terms of shading and lighting and particle effects and stuff. But I'm not saying that nobody could take advantage of it. It wouldn't look way better. But I'm just saying, for a beginner, if you're just starting out making games, right? We're probably not going to be using all the bells. You're just trying to get a game working, get a game done, and you're drawing all the animations yourself. Maybe you have somebody else helping you with that. But you're probably drawing everything yourself. And for that kind of game, for that that kind of sort of solo developer game, it's really not going to look any different, especially if you're starting out. And I think you can learn a lot about games in general, and you can get better at programming by doing it yourself. I don't know. I like it. You have more. To me, it's such a pain in the ass to learn other people's tools. It would take me longer. But anyway, all right. So I just wanted to ramble on about that, and hopefully, just hopefully you see hey, someone as dumb as me can understand how to do this game stuff and explain it in a way that shows you that it's just stupid. That it's not hard at all. That you'll take on the challenge, and you'll make games, and you'll see that really you can do it. You just don't overthink it. It's simpler than you think it is. All right.